Pune. Welcome everyone. ICF Pune chapter welcomes you to the second session of the International Coaching Week 2021. So, what do you expect in the next 90 minutes? We have two speakers, Dr. Anand Deshpande and Sudhir Mutalik. They will share their insightful stories with us. Then there will be Jayashree Kirtane, who will be uh, having a dialogue with them. And then towards the end, we'll have question and answer session. Building tomorrow in conversations of today, our topic for today evening. I am super excited as I always believe that we have the power to build our tomorrow. Yogesh Pargaonkar, today morning session, he said, every soul needs to be given wings to fly into the future he deserves. The wings to fly in our context today is the conversations that we are going to bring in today for tomorrow. I also have read this book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And in these uncertain times, it becomes even more important to build a mindset that serves us in the new normal. We have esteemed speakers and visionary Dr. Anand Deshpande and Sudhir Mutalik who will share their knowledge, experience, and wisdom. So the next 90 minutes are going to be full of inspiring stories. So don't go anywhere. Stay put, stay glued for all the insights. I'm sure you will be motivated to see future in different light. So let us welcome our first speaker, Sudhir Mutalik. Sudhir is first generation entrepreneur, founder and managing director of Positive Metering Pumps Private Limited with 5 manufacturing units in Nashik. Positive Metering Pumps manufactures various types of products and service serves in diverse industries across 40 different countries. That is phenomenal. Visionary he is. In spite of coming from a small town, he has made his mark on the international market. Presently, Sudhir is a chairperson of CII, Confederation of India Industries Maharashtra, member of National Council CII MSME Committee, a trustee with Srijan, a platform for budding engineers to display their creativity in engineering field. I'm sure the audience is curious to hear from you, Sudhir. But before we really move on to hear from you, I would like to introduce our ICF Pune President, Jayashree Kirtane, the moderator for the event. Jayashree is a mathematical economist turned applied psychologist. She leads Alchemy, a boutique consulting and coaching firm. She is president of ICF Pune chapter. Needless to say, she's a coach. She has a huge 3,500 hours of coaching, individual coaching, and more than 1,000 hours of group coaching experience. She has coached leaders from various industries and holds a variety of portfolios. She is also a speaker at many different forums like Society of Women Engineers and Lenin, a coach, speaker, and a writer. The stage is all yours, Sudhir.
Thank you all at ICF Pune chapter for inviting me on this platform. I congratulate you all, the members of ICF Pune, for this coaching week celebration. Wish you all the best. I am really, really happy today to be here with you all for two reasons. One is I'm sharing space with a great entrepreneur in this country, in fact, in the world, Dr. Anand Deshpande. I am hugely honored, Anand and ICF Pune chapter. Believe me, I'm feeling like I have achieved a golden milestone in my life being with Anand here. Sincere thanks to um, Pune chapter. And um, as I said, Jayashree, I owe you one for this. Yeah. Um, and of course, the second reason is I want to salute great courage of the brave person who approved to invite me. Um, a businessman or an entrepreneur on the platform of the trained coaches, trained coaches, and that too from Pune. this actually is out of box thinking, I would say. I'm sincerely thankful to you. Thankful because after getting invite from ICF, I started looking at what this, I mean, organization is about. What do they do? And I surprisingly realized I very much belong to your community. Uh, I am very much a part of your community. Being a coach, I'll tell you how. As expected by the organizers, I'm supposed to share with you how did my journey start. You know, I'll tell you how. I was in my childhood. I used to read a lot of books, like many of you do. But I used to be unhappy. I used to feel restless after reading each book. I used to feel like I'm reading an author's experience or his perception or his or her perception, his or her philosophy. So, reading a book never used to give me that complete satisfaction. Fortunately, now I can say fortunately, I was never good in sports. I never liked even playing, that gully cricket or flying kites. Naturally, during childhood, if you don't like um, such things, you're bound to be alone. I had friends, but I still used to be alone most of the times, and thus I used to get a lot of time with myself. Um, you know, I mean, while talking to myself, I had realized that I didn't like um, to follow anyone. I cannot be a follower of anyone. I'm not happy listening or reading his or her philosophy. This evolved into a kind of decision of having my own space, a space where I can run my own philosophy, where no one will ask me questions about
So
the
Anand,
logic behind the decisions. You know, like as I said, Jayashri, the सिंघम का डायलॉग, ये गांव मेरा है और मैं यहाँ का जयकांत शिकरे. So I wanted to create something like this. So this I think is the root cause, basically creating that space for yourself. I think this must be the same for the artists. What an artist does, an artist wants to finally say something. I feel in every individual there is some kind of energy that wants to come out of your body and mind. Till it doesn't come out, it keeps on building tremendous pressure within you. Exactly the same. I mean, it is like same the steam in a pressure cooker. So a painter may bring this energy out of him in the form of a painting, or maybe a singer, or maybe a sportsman. I am a strong believer that an entrepreneur also is an artist and nothing else. My enterprise is the space that I have created for myself. You can say a platform for myself where I want to um, make my statement, wherein I'm the coach for myself and also for my people. Entrepreneurship for me is the form of my energy within me that wants to constantly come out of me deliveries of my enterprise is the visible form of my philosophy. My people and organization is a part of my, someone was specifying, I think, Sheila, um, they are a part of my soul, my own body. So why I said I belong to your community is because I am the coach for myself and for my people, within my space, which you may call the enterprise or business. And um, and I can tell you, it gives me a great kick. That's the fun of life, a complete satisfaction, especially when I see uh, a person in my organization who has reached a stage of the pre-decided specification. I think that's an amazing experience, and I'm I think I'm living for that, and that's the purpose of life, creating people and creating an organization, and that, I think, that gives me a great pleasure. As I said, yeah, I'm done.
That's it's insightful talk, Sudhir. I like the fact that you said you are an artist, entrepreneur. You see yourself as an artist. I think it's so beautiful that when you are an artist, you create your own kingdom. You paint your business, your for future the way you like it. And I just like that analogy of being an artist.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Jayashri, you have anything to ask him?
Yeah. Oh, yes, I do.
Mhm.
I mean, Sudhir, in our earlier conversation, you had mentioned that, and even now, you mentioned that creating people, creating organization is something that you live for. And you mentioned something about the Midas touch in our earlier call. So I want to know, when you say you are a coach to yourself or you are a coach to your people, what is it that you exactly do?
Yeah. Yes. um, I think if someone asks me today, what do you do in your business, then my only answer is, I create people who do my business. I didn't have any other option but to create people required for my type of business. You know, I didn't have luxury of getting people who had a required set of skills and knowledge in the domain where I had started working. To simplify, let me tell you what I'm doing. I'm manufacturing process equipments and catering to the needs of critical industries like oil and gas and nuclear, you know, power generation, power generation in general. I mean, coal based or gas based or nuclear, petrochemicals, etc. It's a critical field. um, Nashik is not a place where you get people, you know, who have experience in this particular field. Nashik is a manufacturing base for automotive industry or switchgear industry. So, the absence of readily available people, and of course, uh, even if even if ready people would have been there, I mean, whether I would afford such people was the biggest difficulty. So at least initially, I had a strategy like, even a trespasser will be employed. I will tell you quickly a story of our Sangeeta. It's her Sangeeta is her real name, and she is very much there in my team. I'm answering to your question: how did I create people? I definitely remember that. So I remember a year after starting my actual business in 1997. Uh, I mean, this incident took place in 1997. I started in 1996. So I was sitting in my small rented office in Nasik, which was a kind of flat in a residential complex. On a very hot, sunny day in the month of April, Nasik is normally very hot in April or May. Normally, otherwise, it's a very cool place, as cool as I'm looking now, or maybe I am. In the afternoon, my doorbell rang, and I was sitting with my mechanical draftsman working on some drawings. I opened the door. I saw and I mean, now that I know her age, 19-year-old girl wearing sari with a roll of paper in hand. She looked completely exhausted, as if she was uh, walking for a quite long time in that sunny afternoon. She asked whether the office belongs to some pioneer consultancy and all. I said no. I saw her, she was completely upset with my answer, and she was about to leave. I asked her to wait and to come in. I offered a glass of water to her. During the conversation, I realized she was coming from a nearby village, which is, of course, near your favorite Sula. Someone said Sula. And in search of a job. And her qualification was just 10th passed. And she was married. And that's all. And she did not have any other identity. I showed her the drawing board. I told you that I was working with my mechanical draftsman drafting 1997. I showed her the drawing board. I asked her whether she will be able to do drawings. I could immediately see her mood changing towards happiness. Sangeeta became my employee within a week or so. Initially, a simple draftsman. Then immediately after a couple of months, she learned basics of AutoCAD, and in next 3 years, she became my design engineer. For some time, in 2002, I think she became my production manager. 2004, she did. In 2004, we did a forward integration wherein we make tailor-made chemical plants, complete plants for oil and gas industry and all. She became designer, and so on. 10th passed, Sangeeta. Okay, I can tell you, Jayashree, yesterday, Sangeeta, I mean, she's still there with us for more than 20 years now. Yesterday, right on 20th May 2021, she was negotiating a deal worth about 17 crore rupees with a client in UAE. I mean, 17 crore and all. I mean, Anand would say it's a small order value. Anand, I'm sorry, I'm a small man, so we talk about 10, 15, 10, 17 crores only. So Sangeeta was negotiating with an international client. I told her from where she came. And the best thing is client doesn't know who the idiot founder of the company is and the top management is. They didn't require to know. As Sangeeta has been handling the case well, she is complete professional with owning three decent properties in Nashik, which I must mention here. I'm sorry. On her own, built on her own. I'm too happy and proud today to share with you. I have many such people in my organization today. I did not have any option. I could not go to the campus and pick people, when L&T and Thermax and, such people were there. The process of creating people is in a way simple to me. First, you need to have complete clarity of what you want to do. That's very much important. Most of the people, especially MSMEs, I have seen that many times they're confused. about what exactly they are going to do, where are they going to do, and what type of person they require and all. Then I need to know the person completely, completely in depth, everything about the person, background, childhood, strength and weaknesses, many things. I understand all these things through talks with the person, informal talks. You know, I extensively talk to the people. That's, I think, one of the secrets of the soup. Don't get surprised. Almost 80% of my time, believe me, is the fact I spend in talking to only my people. And most importantly, I listen to them. That's I think more important. More than I talk, I listen to them. And once you understand the person well, you need to create just, just a anguthi mein, you need to create a ring of gold wherein the diamond can be fitted well. It's as simple as that. You need to, that's what I said. What they need is just a Midas touch. Create opportunities for them. And if you create good opportunities for them, knowing their background, strength and weaknesses, their anatomy, their upbringing, people can create heaven on the earth. That's what I'm experiencing. I think, did I answer your question?
Well said. Well said. Of course you did. And people who are here in this, in this conversation, listening to you, Sudhir, maybe when they began, in this conversation, maybe wondering, okay, what are we doing here in a coaching week and in a coaching setting? What are we talking about, right? And I think the idea behind, in fact, having both you and Anand is that, otherwise coaches live in the world of coaches and we think only we can do coaching because we are coaches, right? Because we are trained, we are credentialed and so on. I think the idea behind having this session is to just uncover the fact that so many aspects and facets of coaching are just strewn all around there, and in fact they are the ones that really they really contribute to the success of entrepreneurs like you. So I think what I picked up from you, for example, is that you had the clarity. You spotted some kind of, I would say, talent or at least the zeal to do something in her. And then you said you had conversations. You listened to her. And when you listen to everything, I'm sure now you're mentioning her 10th pass, but when it did not come in the way of she negotiating a big deal on behalf of your company, it just means that you don't hold any bias against people who are, less educated. So I think being unbiased, listening to people, having clarity, creating vision for people, I think some of these things is what we do as coaches on a day-to-day basis. So you're very right. You do belong to our community. So I'm just mindful
that's why I was saying, really, that's why I was saying I'm really worried. How did you invite a person like me? Because the interests are conflicting.
not at all. We will certainly offer a membership to our chapter to you, Sudhir. And I'm just mindful of time actually. And one question that many coaches may be itching to ask you is, I'm asking on their behalf. Have you ever engaged a formal external coach while you are a coach to yourself and to others? Have you ever engaged? And if yes, did you find any value in that?
Formal coach for myself?
External coach for yourself or for your team, for your people?
I can never have a coach for myself in my life, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's possible. I want to die creating a history of being an entrepreneur or maybe a crazy guy, died without getting formally mentored,
Coached.
even for a single minute. I told you that I never was a follower and I don't have that liking for to work with someone else experience or whatever you can say.
Sure.
That's not my type. And of course, yes. So not for me. Sometimes I do get external help for myself. Sometimes I do get external help for my people, not for myself. Sometimes I conceptualize the deliveries. Sometimes I just give them requirements for a team, a project specific requirement, sometimes technical topics and all. It depends. Yes, sometimes it adds value. There's no doubt about it, and it reflects sometimes in the balance sheet also. Yep.
Okay. But you would like to die as a crazy entrepreneur who's coachless.
Yeah, coachless.
Okay. Okay. Mhm. Not a very not a very inspiring thought, but I will live with it. Live with it.
I know.
So, Jill, one last question. I mean, since you are the motivator and since you are the person who spends so much time, invests so much time in talking to your people, who motivates? I mean, how do you self-coach yourself? When you say you coach yourself, who motivates? How motivator motivates himself? Are there any low points? And how do you come out of those?
Yeah. Of course, I'm a human being, very much a human being, and like all have highs and lows in life, I also have. But I don't think it is that difficult, because once you know that you don't want to share your difficulties with anyone,
Mhm.
you do not want to go and discuss your difficulties with anyone. And I told you, since childhood, I have a habit of talking to myself. So I think this is sufficient for me when I to motivate myself and all. This is point number one. Point number two, I can tell you one thing for sure. Does it mean that I have stopped learning? I can guarantee you that I have not stopped learning.
Mm.
My way of learning is interacting with people. I extensively interact with
Okay.
various people from across the world, and then I talk to them, and it keeps me motivating many a times. I mean, so
That's
their experiences and all, of course, I don't want to immediately jump and catch their experience, but definitely learning by interaction is a best way of learning for me. That is
yes.
what I have adopted. Yeah.
Fantastic. And it's a great thing that you've understood it for yourself and you're practicing.
Yes.
Amazing. So
Jayashree,
yeah, just the last question. Sorry, yes, Sheila.
yes,
Time.
can I ask, do we have time to ask one more question?
I just have one question actually, and then we may have to move on to Anand. If,
Right.
sorry if you don't mind, just hold on till the Q&A. So Sudhir, I think the last thing that we want to hear from you is the whole inspiring project at Siachen.
Yeah.
And how did you align your vision with, how did you sell it to your people? I think your vision. That's the question.
I think I will take it from this, that how did I align the vision and all. There's nothing like, or maybe aspirations, personal aspirations of people. See, I believe that everybody on this planet, whether he's a rich, poor, man, woman, physically challenged or whoever, he or she wants to win. That we need to understand as leaders. And what we need to do is create a space or maybe a platform for them to win, and that's all. Then the job is done. Then they are completely on their own. Same happened. We have many such stories, like one of them is Siachen Glacier. I'll tell you, I started in 1996, but when I graduated in 1990, since then I used to think like I should do something for my country, because the movement or my upbringing is like that I was associated with ABVP, Akhil Bharatiya Vidyarthi Parishad, and worked very hard for that organization. I'm a part of it even now, wherein we are taught like, do something for the country, otherwise you are useless. But now I'm an engineer, I want to do something on my own. What will I do? I got attracted towards defense technology naturally. So initially I used to manufacture some components for ordnance factories like the rifle factory, Ishapur, or the training devices and all. And my simultaneously my project of manufacturing my product and all was going on, when I came across in a news in 1996-97, when I was discussing with one of my dealers in Delhi, that army, somehow it happened that in some officer was fired on that day. Fired means उसको बहुत डांट पड़ी थी and all, and then he came for dinner and they said पता नहीं यार क्या करूँ. I'll tell you their issue was Siachen is a glacier, you know, I mean, Siachen is a glacier. So, I mean, the temperature goes down below to minus 60 degrees Celsius. Kerosene is a life for all the Jawans there, Fauji's there. It's a 700 square kilometer kind of area. It's a huge area. So, Jawans are posted at various posts, and kerosene, which they call K oil, is a life for them for many things, for maintaining their laundries, for creating heat, for maintenance of their weapons and snow scooters and all. They need kerosene. Kerosene is the fuel. Even for illumination, they use kerosene, you know. So what was difficult, I mean, up to one point of time, the lorries which used to carry uh, kerosene barrels can reach, but finally there is a glacier, you know, lorries can't go there. So army used to use choppers to pick the barrels, and then used to use droppings at various location posts. But during winter, sorties would not take place, and the droppings finally the Jawans may not get. There's a immediate boundary on one side, China, on the other side, Pakistan. So it is to fall in there. Beyond the boundaries, movements of our Jawans used to be captured. So firing used to be. There are many difficulties. There were many difficulties. So droppings was a difficulty. So they wanted to have some system which can, you know, ensure the supply of kerosene. And but it is difficult, minus 60 degrees Celsius. See, for example, it's a liquid. So if you want to have a system, means you need to have a pumping system. But how will you run a pumping system there? Minus 60 degrees Celsius temperature. There is no foundation because it's a glacier. A machine requires a foundation. Machine requires power. Where will you generate power? And if anything goes wrong in a machine, you need to send a person to repair it. I mean, in glacier, to talk for 5 kilometers, maybe it takes 15 days also. It is not that simple. So many such difficulties. And I thought, let me work in this area. थोड़ा जुनून भी था. I was too young, and then I said, I'll find out. I'll try to work on this. So there was one company who helped in creating a piping which can sustain at that particular temperature and all. And I created a model of pumps which do not require a power, which do not require foundation. The metallurgy is such that it can work at minus 60 degrees Celsius. We offered it to the army in 97, 98, early 98. Okay, they accepted it, but the typical bureaucratic this thing, it took some time. But then what happened is, and then we supplied some 15, 20 samples and all. I mean, after some time in May 99, this Kargil came, you know. So that time they wanted to divert definitely the choppers at many places, and they wanted, but at the same time, they wanted to ensure the supply of kerosene to the Jawans in Siachen Glacier. And then they luckily remembered Sudhir Mutalik. ये सुधीर मुतालिक ने कुछ किया था. And then they called me Delhi, and then at Leh 56 APO, their engineering unit, and then they said जितना ला सकते हो उतना लाओ, and then you go to Siachen Glacier. You know, this happened so very quickly. We supplied a lot, and then by that time it was May end or June. You know, this was all going on. The war was going on, and during that period, army took undertaking from me that अगर कुछ होता है तुमको, so you're on your own. Army will not be responsible naturally. Why would they take a responsibility of a civilian? But I was fortunate enough to be one of the 3 or 4 civilians so far to be there at the battlefield, and that too during that Kargil war. And we, with the help of Faujis there, we installed my pumping system, and I was there during that particular period during the war for 45 days. I can tell you, it's a tough job, because those who Jawans also, if they when they go there, they get some Seva medal or something like that medal, because they are there at the high altitude. I was never trained to be at high altitude. the scarcity of oxygen. Now we know what is the meaning of scarcity, of shortage of oxygen and all. So, but that fire in the belly to do something for the country or die there, something like that. So it was there, and initially I was all alone. When I came back, you cannot imagine the kind of pride that I could see in my. That by that time we were a team of about 25, 30 people. Everybody wanted to go there. Everybody wanted to do something for the country. I was telling you, everybody wants to win. It's not about the personal aspiration and all. They want to do something larger than life, And if you create opportunities like this, then these personal aspirations and all do not come in the way, and they would like to work. Then two of my people, Sheetal and Rakesh, they went there. It was a very tough time for them. They were caught on a hill afterwards, after the war and all was over, but still our project continued. They was stuck on a hill for 17 hours in that freezing temperature. Fortunately, they were spotted by an army vehicle and they are alive today. Rakesh now is heading operations in one of my plants, and Sheetal is looking after development. They are all
Thanks.
high, so I think that winning of a person, we need to spot. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks. And not thank you so much. I think it gave goosebumps to so many people. And I have my colleague, in fact, who's an ex-army, and he's himself writing in the chat box. Very proud of you, Kanan Prakash Dodapkar. Thank you for that comment. And thanks, Sudhir. I think we will, leave you at that note where everybody wants to contribute to something which is larger than their own life. If we are able to tap into that, then we have that person for life. Thank you. Thanks. Sheila, over to you to introduce Anand.
Right. I'm actually awestruck after hearing to Sudhir about his contribution to the country. I also read in the biodata that it saved billions of dollars of money for Indian Army. That's a phenomenal contribution to the nation. Hats off to you, Sudhir. So, moving to the next, needs no introduction. He is one of the most enterprising entrepreneur India can have. I was told that keep it a short introduction, but I find it really hard to describe Anand in few words. So Anand is a founder, chairman, managing director of Persistent Systems. Right from inception in 1990, Persistent has grown multifolds and is publicly traded global company of today, having 10,000 plus employees in 18 countries. Wow. He has done BTech from IIT Kharagpur, MS and PhD from Indiana University, USA, a true technology visionary who identifies and invests in next generation technologies and encourages internal entrepreneurship. He is a part of so many initiatives, part-time member at UDII, Aadhaar. He's a trustee at VLDB Endowment, founding member at iSpirit, India's first product think bank, founder of De Asra Foundation, founder member at I4C, a platform to proactively scout, showcase, and handhold technology innovations. So, can we just have our next speaker, Anand Deshpande, here?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to be here. So let me just say the following. So Jayashree and I have been chatting about this event, and I want to start with a few disclaimers, and I'm going to make a few. I'm going to make five statements first, and then I'm going to have a conversation with Jayashree and with the rest of you today. So I think more than me giving a speech, I'm really looking forward to chatting with you and learning from you in this process, right? So first is I'm not a qualified coaching professional. Let me just be very upfront. Though, and I must add further that even though Jayashree sent me a slide explaining to me the difference between a mentor and a coach, I just couldn't understand the difference. And I'm going to use the two sort of synonymously. So I don't know what difference between mentoring and coaching is, but all the same, I run a business, I meet a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people, I learn from a lot of people. So, I think I follow some of the coaching principles. Perhaps I have no clue what I'm doing, but all the same, I'm happy to share with you what I do and what I have learned by observing. So I like to observe things. I like to listen to people. I like to observe what's going on. And I like to observe careers, career growth, professional growth. And, that's sort of what I think a lot about. And that's where I like to think about scaling larger numbers and look at national level problems and things of that kind. So I'm really excited by when it looks at scale and things of that kind. Lastly, I want to say that I know I'm based in Pune, right? So in Pune, we all believe that giving advice is our Janma Siddha Hakka, right? With birthright. So I don't mind giving advice for free. I don't know what I'm saying, but that doesn't stop us from giving, advice. So people invite me and I'm happy to give some advice. The most important part though is, it's not about the advice that I give you. It's about what you pick out of it. So ignore what everybody says, pick what you think is important. And that's, I think, really the substance of coaching. Coaching and mentoring is not about what coaches and mentors tell you, but it's about what we absorb from the conversation. So with that little bit of a disclaimer and a little bit of a context setting, I'm going to give you a few things where I'm going to potentially contradict what Sudhir said. Though I think he also misunderstood it. He said that he talks to a lot of people and learns from them. I see the people he learns from are all coaches of his. So he has coaches, even though he doesn't like to call them a coach. So that's how I see that. I believe that everyone needs a coach and you need a coach all your life. So I think, and there is enough evidence that every successful professional that I've read about has coaches and is learning from other people. And we are dependent on other people for our success and we work together, and it is all about learning from each other. So coaching is a very crucial item in everybody's life, and all the most successful people have coaches, and everyone needs a coach. So what you guys are doing is an extremely noble profession, and pretty much everyone in the world needs a coach. And I'm delighted to be part of a group that makes it happen. The corollary of this is that, there's only so many of you who are qualified coaches. So everyone can't have a qualified coach. So we have to do with something less. And that's going to be my last item that I'm going to share. So the first item I'm going to mention is that everyone needs a coach and everyone should think about a coach and should have a coach. And even though Sudhir said he doesn't want to have a coach, I think he should get one. The second point I want to make is that coaching and mentoring, and I'm going to mix these words up, is a two-way activity. So it's not an asymmetric thing where the coach or the mentor tells something and the mentee is just supposed to listen to it. Best mentorship, in my opinion, happens when there is conversation and conflict in some sense. When there is a discussion, we disagree, we agree, we think about things, and then we reflect. The real value of coaching is in the willingness to that whole creating that discussion and creating that conflict, pushing back, looking at things in different ways. So that's really what is important. So I see mentoring and coaching to be a two-way activity rather than a one-way activity. Okay, so that's the second point I wanted to make. The third point I want to tell you all, and we'll talk about some of these two questions and answers as well. So I believe that in everyone's career, every individual is responsible for his own career. I don't believe I can make someone else's career. They make their own career. All right. We as leaders or whatever, we can inspire people and help them think about different things. But finally, we are not responsible for their career. They are responsible for their own career. And I believe that mentorship is everyone's responsibility. So I don't think it's fair to say that, oh, the company should appoint me a mentor. That concept somehow I'm not exactly a big fan of, meaning we can enable you to find a mentor if you decide you want to be mentored. So mentorship and coaching will work best if you're ready to be mentored. And we'll talk about this in some of the questions that I'm sure, Jayashree will ask me on this topic, especially considering I run a large company, we have a lot of people. So I certainly believe that it's not company's responsibility to appoint coaches to people, but everyone needs to decide that they are ready to be coached, they want to be mentored, and they should find their mentors. And in some cases, the company can help you find them. The fourth item that I want to mention is that, there's no one coach or one mentor. We live a life which is complicated, it's multidimensional, and we as individuals need to create a group of mentors and coaches who will help us in our life's journey. So it's not enough to say, oh, I have one coach and I go to one coach and that's how it is. Usually you want to think about this mentorship as a long-term thing, and you want to build it out, and you want to have a way of identifying who your coaches are and how do you interact with them. And coaching works well when the coach has the context of your business or what your activities are. So keeping that long-term relationship overall is a good thing. And I think that's something that we should think about. And I believe coaches are everywhere, meaning there are coaches all over the place. You can use anybody as a mentor. Your kids can be actually very good mentors. They're the ones who will ask you hard questions. And there are many other people like that who may be asking questions. And most of the people that I deal with, mentors, coaches, they're not necessarily qualified, but they do serve a purpose. Now, the last thing I want to mention is for you all as a community, I think, you can do a lot more by sort of making your coaching movement a little bit more wider, and more people should understand what exactly coaches do and how are they, how do they respond, and how can they be useful, and why should somebody hire a professional coach versus just work with someone who's a mentor, right? So I want to just mention that I think you all should spend a little bit of time thinking a little bit about, how do you position your community so that while everyone needs a coach, how do you go about getting one? There is this whole perception that one, I don't know, how can I get a coach? I don't know about the existence of coaches as one part. The second problem that most people have is there is a belief that, oh, these coaches will be very expensive. They will tweak what I do. They're going to tell me what I do, and I don't necessarily want to listen to anyone. So I think there is a little bit of a gap in terms of the perception of what coaches can do, should do, and all of that stuff. And I think there is an opportunity for you all to really change the narrative. And I'm glad that you're doing this event where it's open to everyone. And we have about 100 people here today. And I presume most of them are coaches, but I think you can do more by creating a little bit of awareness amongst the community as to the value that you provide and what coaching is, and broaden your field in some sense by maybe helping more people to become coaches, even if they are not trained. So I'll stop here. And this is sort of what I wanted to set up as an initial context. I think this is so I'm just delighted to be here. And it was very inspiring to hear Sudhir talk about various things. And even though I have contradicted him in a few areas, I think he has really done an amazing job of building a business from scratch and really running it the way he is running it. And he is a maverick in that sense. And more power to people like him. And we need many people who do those kinds of things. But all the same, I still think that everyone needs a coach. Okay. So I'm going to stop here and then invite Jayashree to open it out for questions from her or from anyone else in the audience.
Thank you. Thanks, Anand. And thank you so much. Sudhir broke many hearts, but you have mended them.
Sorry, I'm talking to a community of coaches, so I have to. No, but I
be
really
mindful of that.
No, not just that. No, I really believe this. I really believe it. I think it's very hard. Life is tough. Okay. And it is, we all have hard times. We have tough times. We need somebody to show us a mirror. And we need somebody to listen to us and to guide us through. And there is no, whoever those are, they are your coaches. So whether you call them formally or otherwise, I think that's what the role they play.
So, in fact, day before, and I did attend a very engaging session with Ty, where you shared your story, and there your own mentor was present, and I kind of listened to it.
Several of my mentors were there actually.
Many,
but
in fact, the entire mentor table was there. In fact, but your professor, I think, would you like to share with us as to, because that mentoring relationship has been there for, I guess, decades. And how has it been for you to have a mentor like him?
So, the person you're talking about is Professor Deepak Phatak. Okay, he is a professor at IIT Bombay. Now, I was in IIT Kharagpur, so he was not my teacher when I was a student. So when I came back in '90, I decided I was going to be operating from Pune. So I went to IIT Bombay saying, hey, you know what, let me go find out. And he had already had a reputation. He was a very well-known faculty member. He was the head of the department in computer science out there. And somehow I kind of got to like him, and he was very friendly with me. And I made a lot of friends around that time in the early 90s. And I was working in the database area. He was working in that area. So we got along very well. And I found him to be very out of the box in his thinking. He was not just a traditional faculty member. And he had good worldly advice, and he was something he was willing to make good comments. He liked me, I liked him, and it was a very good equation that we had. And I have been using my time with him very effectively. I try to make sure I meet him at least a few times a year, listen to him, spend time, share with him what is going on, ask him for guidance, and see where to go in terms of what may be the next set of things that may be appropriate. And when I have had difficulties, there are two places where I'll give you examples. So one is we had a situation where we had created a company. There was a lot of fight going on between internal people, and I was really very, very worked up, if you might say that. And we were like doing silly things at that time. So one of the things that he came back, and so he sent me a letter. Actually, he wrote me a letter in Marathi, which I have preserved forever. It's a beautiful letter, and one of these days I will publish it, but I'm waiting for my book because I don't want to release it before that. But whenever I write mine, I will have that letter in that book. But essentially, he basically said that, you know what, it's kind of stupid to fight amongst each other. The real enemy or the Firang is outside. You have to go fight. You got to work together and fight the world. And if there's a small fight going on, let it go and keep moving rather than getting off and getting worked up about it. It was a pretty simple advice, and it delivered it really well, and that really helped me. I backed off, and then I moved off of that. Maybe we made a little bit of a loss, but the decluttering of my mind that happened as a function of that really helped me. And I said, forget it. I've lost some money. I'm going to make sure I make much more than that on the other side. And I really focused on the rest of my business, and we really did well. So all of these kinds of things are very hard to do on your own. Sometimes you get rat holed into some kind of a hole, and then having someone else take a big picture view and give you a broad view of things really helps. And the other thing that I find very useful is that there are certain times, and I mentioned this in that session as well, is that when you have a very complicated problem that needs a specialist to give you very specific advice for a particular thing, how do you get to them, right? So having a mentor like Professor Phatak means he knows a lot of people, he knows a lot of students. Within a distance of 2, I can reach someone who I would not have been able to reach on my own. If I can't call them, I can ask sir to say, sir, can you please call this guy? And I want to meet him. The access to meetings becomes so much easier because he calls them instead of me, my calling them. And I do the same for other people as well. So this whole thing of pay forward is something that I sincerely believe in. And I really think that we all are an ecosystem, and we have to, if you want to draw from the network, you have to give first.
Absolutely. Thank you. And yeah, I think you very rightly mentioned, I think somebody who takes a macro view, a bigger perspective would help declutter. And the paying forward, of course. I mean, we always say, right, in our tradition, that Guru Run is something that you cannot pay back to the Guru. You have to pay forward by being a Guru to somebody else. And I think same
Exactly.
holds with mentoring or coaching. Yeah, wonderful. And you very rightly mentioned that we are a small community of coaches, and small or big, whatever. Typically, when coaches go to organizations, they would say, I'm a coach and everybody needs a coach, and I offer coaching, and I'm excellent at coaching. These are my credentials, etc. But I think when a business is looking at somebody who's offering coaching, the business is not looking at what modality is that person offering. The business is looking at solving some of its challenges, right? And or people, for example, business leaders are looking at solving some of their challenges. So in your opinion, what are some of the current challenges that you think could be solutioned or co-created a solution with the help of coaches?
Yeah, I think there are many aspects here, but let me focus on the people aspect first. See, what happens is, and I'll say this in the context of a system, right? So We've been around for 30 years. We are about 13,500 people worldwide now. So people are all over the place. We have hired almost 3,000 people in the last 8 months. So some of these people have never come to office yet. They've never been around. We have been working from home for the last 1 year. So the reality is that people dynamics, keeping people going, it's very hard. And that is the hard part of getting the business. And a lot of the constraints in some sense are getting people to think about the right things and getting them all aligned. And within the organization, there is organizational politics and dynamics that holds people back from sharing their own issues or challenges or whatever else. And sometimes, it helps to have individuals sort themselves out, get aligned and all that when they personally have someone who they are interacting with and are able to kind of keep this going. So those relationships I find are very valuable. So there are two, as I said, there may be two ways of how you might want to look at it. So organization needs some, I will call that consulting, right? So I need to decide what my future is. What should I do in the next 10 years, 5 years, whatever. I'm more likely to go to a firm to go get that advice. I'm very unlikely to go to an individual to tell me what to do for my future as a company at the stage of business that we are running it right now. So we would go to a McKinsey, BCG, those kinds of guys, or whatever else, or Indian ones or whatever. But we are looking at consulting to help us on this kind of stuff. But there are a lot of people in various centers, all of these places. They all need to help themselves to get that going. And as I said, and this is where I think you guys can do something different is, see, if you come to me and say, oh, I want to coach you or I want to coach someone, everyone's going to say, forget it, man. I don't need a coach. I get lost. I don't believe you. Somehow everyone understands they have a challenge and they need to figure out and how to get better and all that. So somehow I think you need to create this sort of friendlier atmosphere about this relationship that a coach is more a mentor or a partner or someone who's going to show me the mirror, is going to work with me through that thing. And the fact that you have external context is going to help me get out of the rat hole that I'm likely to find myself in. And this is sort of somewhere you need to create that that image that you are helping individuals get better at what they do, and you are not necessarily telling them what to do. You're not my teacher in that sense, right? And coaches don't have to be senior or superior, quote unquote. They are more, sort of advisors, friends, whatever else. So there is a little bit of, there's a perception of what a coach is, and there's a little bit of a gap in the way people like to see coaches and all of that stuff, especially in India right now. I think in the US, it's fairly well understood that every executive will have a coach. And it's quite common. In India, it's not that common. And I think if you do something different to encourage people to feel like, you need to have some help and all of that, that may be a good way to look at this.
Right. So how to really frame our value proposition, that's what
Yes.
we need to work at. Yeah, fantastic. And I think I know you do many things, but the three things that we spoke about in our earlier call, one of them is, helping, what you do is helping entrepreneurs scale up. Right. And those are, as I mentioned, they look like group mentoring workshops, in fact, because you are giving them some expertise, but you're also allowing them to use that expertise in their own context and create what they want to create for themselves. So in that, deck, what I saw was there were bottlenecks. So in your opinion, what would be the deadliest bottleneck for an entrepreneur in that whole scaling up journey?
So let me turn that around and say, I'm not going to talk about the constraint of the entrepreneur first. Let me explain the constraint of the company. So I'll tell you a little bit of context on this that may be useful for your team as well. So, I got invited. I was part of the NASSCOM Executive Council for a while, and NASSCOM has a lot of IT companies as members of NASSCOM. And everyone talks about startups, or everyone talks about large companies. What we realized is that, and this is quite obvious, if you look at a histogram of companies, and this will be true for companies in CIA and other places as well, there are a large number of companies that, let me step back. Every company, right, goes through a non-linear growth curve. So companies don't grow in a straight line. They go through what I find is S curves. So you do certain things you'll see growth, grow up very fast, and then you tend to flatten out. And then you have to find the next S curve. If you don't do something different, you will stay at the top of that S curve and remain there. So what it takes to get from a 0 to 1 crores is very different from 1 to 10, 10 to 100. So there are a large number of companies in India who get stuck in the 10 crore, meaning tens of crores range, but will never see hundreds of crores, even after 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And the reason that happens is where we are trying to focus on the deck that I shared with you, which was around second orbit. So now let me, in that context, okay, so if I'm talking to companies who are in the 10 crore range and not growing, getting into 100 crore range, and they want to see a 10x growth, the biggest impediment or constraint at that time that I find is that the mindset of the founder is the biggest constraint at that point. The founder has maxed out. The founder was doing a few things. There are a lot of things that can be done in the business, but there's only so much a founder can do. You have only so much time in a day. You have only so much context that you can have within a day, right? So typically what happens is that when you get to about a 10 CR, 15 CR in that range, you're running a business where you are very full in your, meaning your time is full, your hands are full, and you don't have time to get to other things. You don't know how to delegate and all that. So the founder's mind becomes one of the biggest constraints for these businesses to get to the next level. So if you are able to convince this founder that, hey, the growth is fun. So what happens is that 10, 12 crores, they say, oh no, if I grow, my culture will change. It'll look very different. I don't like that fact, all of that stuff. Most of the times they are trying to justify that because they are not able to grow. So what we do in our workshops is to help these companies to think, hey, why do you have to be stuck at 10? Go to 100. What should you do systematically to get from 10 crores to 100 crores? Is very different from what you have done to get from 1 to 10 crores. And that is really what we've been focusing on as part of the workshop. And the reason I say we is I work very closely with Ashok Korwar as part of this particular activity. And you know him, and we have talked about this in the past as well. But that's really what that is all about. And that's the constraint that I see in the market.
So it's the mind that is the impediment.
No, I'd say more than mind, more than mind. So there's a difference between mind and mindset.
Okay. Sorry.
So I want to mention that it's mindset that is a constraint. The mind is not the constraint. Mind is unconstrained. It's the mindset that is constrained. So what happens is there is this belief that, oh, I'm not Shah Jahan, so I cannot build the Taj Mahal, right? So I am so and so, so I cannot never do it. And so there is this whole thing that, I have decided that I have defined myself to be a certain set of things. I can do only this much. I can only do this. I only hire these kinds of people. I only do. Yeah. So you define your own constraints, which have worked for you to get you from 1 to 10 crores. You're not willing to shake them off. So that mindset of saying, growth is good, and I want to really relook at my assumptions that got me here and take a fresh look at it is very hard for everyone. And that's sort of where I think, coaching or mentorship can help. And what I tend to do as part of this group coaching or whatever, and see, as I said, I prefer to be in a scaling business, a scaled business. I cannot afford to do one-on-one coaching. It's not viable for me. So I much rather say I write about it and let the blog deal with it, or a LinkedIn deal with it, or I do a workshop or a coach where I can get 25, 30, 40 people together, and then we are more efficient and effective than doing it one at a time.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I think what you are calling constraints, we say limiting beliefs, and that's what exactly coaches challenge.
Correct. So this constraint concept is directly taken from, and we use this thing from the theory of constraints from Goldratt, right? So we are using Goldratt's principle to help people identify that constraint. So that's why we sort of say, okay, that's the constraint, that's the well-defined definition for it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think one last question from me, and then maybe I'll request my colleague to just read out the questions from the chat box. I think the Deyasra Foundation, which is your foundation, and that's your passion. I think, could you tell us something about that? And what is the why behind the whole, even the foundation and the passion?
Okay. So, Deyasra Foundation is a personal family foundation. Okay. So Bill Gates has his own foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates, Dell has his own Deshpande, meaning Desh Deshpande has his own. So I needed to have my own, right? So this is my own personal family foundation. D is for Deshpande and ASRA are the initials of the family members. So Anand, Sonali, Riya, and Arun, you know all of them. So that's really what it is. So it's a family foundation. So the idea was, life's been good, God's been kind, all of those things. And you sort of turn 50 and you say, okay, we've got to do something to give back. You've been working well and all. So the way a lot of these people have done is to do a personal mission, saying, okay, beyond my persistent mission, I need to do something that will make a huge difference. And sitting where I am sitting and what I've learned from the tech industry and the data and the tech, the way I have worked in the last 25, 30 years, I figured that I could I needed to find a problem that lasts my next 25, 30 years. And I found that one of the biggest problems that we have in India is that we need people to be employed at scale. So we need large number of people who can be, who can be employed, and employment is a big issue. As we drill a little bit further, we found that to get employment to happen, you need more employers. So you need more people to be self-employed and job creators rather than creating this particular thing. And if you look through the problem, we have about 25 million people at every age in India. We need about 18 million jobs every year. There's no way no government is going to create those jobs. Everyone has to be sort of looking at themselves. Gig economy is going to happen. Everyone's going to be self-employed, all of that stuff. So I figured that we need to focus on helping individuals become better at self-employment. And so we focus a lot on the urban services segment. So these are the food counters, the photographers, the fashion design, beauty salons, these kinds of businesses. These are small businesses, very little training. You can get yourself a lot of training available in the market, but people don't tell you how to run a business. So what we have done is, in your mentoring parlance, we have tried to abstract all the places where a small business could get stuck. And then for every point that you might get stuck, we have a set of how do you get past that kind of thing. So we have a DIY, we'll tell you a checklist on why you are stuck. Second, we have a place where we say, okay, if you're stuck, here's how you should go address that problem. Then we have some stuff like who can help you. There's some list of partners who can do that. And finally, we are trying to create benchmarks on saying that, how do you make money? Are you making money and all that? I'm really happy to say that, we are at about 125,000 businesses supported already. And we now have a partnership with Niti Aayog, and they have set up something called WEP, which is Women's Entrepreneurship Platform, which has been around for 3 years. We have taken that over now from 1st of April. And we are going to drive this, and I'm going to try to really work very hard to see how to get a few million women to have be empowered to feel good about becoming entrepreneurs, right? So that's the Niti Aayog thing, and we'll of course implement it for non-women as well, meaning men. But yeah, that's the plan. But yeah, it's pretty exciting what's going on.
Absolutely. Kudos. And so the questions are over from my side. There are some questions in the chat box. One that I saw from Gauri. Gauri, if you want to unmute yourself and ask that question yourself.
Yeah, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So my question to you, Anand sir, is basically that how does Persistent ensure that their leaders act as coaches in this digital age now, with this entire change happening?
Yeah, again, two things. Let me sort of preface right now that I have moved to the chairman role, so I'm not dealing with the day-to-day stuff at Persistent. But in general, we have a model where we do assign people to mentor other people, and there is a fairly organized system on how we ask people to look at talking to younger people, newer people, and all of that stuff. So there is a fairly healthy system in place to allow people to say that if you want a mentor, you should be able to find one within the company. And yeah, we do have people who would go to people outside as well. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole system around that. The HR team basically focuses on some of these areas. And yeah, I mean, that's at our scale, it's a process driven thing. There's some check boxes, some KRS. Somebody has to deal with it.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Renuka, any questions from the chat box for either Sudhir or Anand or both?
There is one question for Sudhir sir from. So Sudhir, sir, you mentioned entrepreneurship is a form of energy, and energy can only be transferred from one form to another. So, how do you plan to share this energy with the young entrepreneurs?
How do I plan?
To share this energy with the young entrepreneurs?
Yeah, of course, Dr. Anand also is doing a great job scaling up. That is a big thing that you are doing, because most of the small industries are stuck at a particular point, and at that point they need help. That you are doing a great job. Yes. How do I transfer? It's a, you can say, a personal mission for people like me. I was trying to share the other day, I think with Jayashree only. We have, as the last national sampling survey says, I think 2009, 18 or 17, we have 6 crore 33 lakh, 6.33 crore non-agricultural enterprises in the country. And we have been importing, even edible oil worth about 70,000 crores, which is 75% of our requirement. Indians are crazy. They consume 20 kg of edible oil per annum, as against the actual requirement of 7 kg. So the market is about 1 lakh crore worth, 1 lakh crore. Agri, we say that I mean, Sheti Pradhan Desh and all, but still we are importing 70% of our edible oil. This is where people like me come into the picture to motivate youngsters in this country. Go to the gaon, village, kheda, talk to them, and see that they will start something on their own. There are many such things. 154 components recently, medical devices recently, the Indian government has said they will stop import. And what are those 154 components which we used to procure, import, worth about 4,000 crores? 65% of them are from China. Needles, bandage, thermometer, 4,000 crore. Young, you are expecting us to expecting me to transfer that energy to the budding entrepreneurs. I mean, this is all we need to place in front of them and tell them, boss, I mean, it's high time. India needs people, entrepreneurs. And immediately I should set a target for myself, or maybe the organizations for which I'm working, like CII. कि 10 crore entrepreneurs होने चाहिए. Why 6.33 crores now? Immediately in some time, so that motivating our youngsters to start something on their own is the need of time.
Thank you. There is a question from Sachin Janani for Dr. Anand. You have been in sales for a long time. Can you share your experience of how one can switch from tech to sales?
Well, see, I think everyone is always a salesman, okay? So whether you are in tech or otherwise, you need to be a salesman. And I've been trying to tell everywhere, actually, including, so most recently I had an opportunity to talk to AICTE director, and I mentioned to him that he should include sales as a course in every engineering college. Everyone needs to know how to learn to sell, and we are going to move into a gig economy where everyone needs to be selling all the time. And whether you may be selling internally or externally depends on the context of where you may be, but everyone has to be a salesperson. Now, let me explain what selling is all about. So selling is not about you selling. It's about making someone buy what you want to sell. Okay. So it's not about selling something. You have to create the need and the desire for someone who is a potential buyer so that he buys from you. Nobody likes to buy from a salesman. You buy when it is a delight and a pleasure for you to buy that product. So part of the job of the salesman is to create that ambience and environment that makes it very exciting for a person who wants to buy very willingly and happily. So that's really the job that we as a sales guy, my job is not to sell. My job is to make the ambience of the environment of the process so delightful for this buyer who wants to buy that he comes and buys from me, meaning he feels good about having bought it. So I didn't sell him something, I helped him buy what I wanted to sell to him. So that's really the crux of how the sales process needs to work. So what I'm trying to tell you in your context as well, each one of you are salesmen. Don't just go and come to me and say, I want to sell you something. I will never buy from you if you try to sell me something. But if you create a need for me that I need your service, then I will go begging to you and ask you for that service. Okay. So that's really where I think you guys need to think a little bit about how do you position yourself and all of that stuff. So that's really the key tip about selling. And I'll give you one more tip for those of you who are looking at selling. And the second tip is that, the first thing that needs to happen on a sales process is that person who is buying needs to remember your product and remember you for that product. All right. So when you come and meet me for a sales call, I may not have any need for you, but maybe 6 months later, 1 year later, I might say, oh yeah, I need something. I should remember that, hey, Jayashree, I think she offers coaching. I should call her. So 1 year later, Jayashree, I should remember Jayashree. So Jayashree has to create that environment and a situation when she meets me so that 1 year later, I'll still remember. By the way, Jayashree is very good at doing this. And so I don't want to, my example is partly because I see her in front of me on the screen. But for anybody to sell, right? First thing you need to do is to make sure people remember you.
Sure.
And that's the key to sales.
Sure. Do we have time for one more question, Sheila?
Yes, we have 4 more minutes to close. I have received a few questions on my personal chat here.
So,
We just
okay, so
3
I'll
questions.
just ask the last question.
Yes.
From Mr. Sudhir. In 2019, the failure rate of startups was around 90%. Research concludes 21.5% of startups fail in the first year, 30% in the second year, 50% in the fifth year, and 70% in the 10th year. What can be the reason behind this? Anyone? This is to...
Okay, so let me correct you on this point first. Okay.
Sure.
When startups fail, they have learned enough. There is no such thing as a failure for a startup. And this is something that we all need to understand very clearly. Every one of us entrepreneurs, we are on a journey, okay? Success and failure are part of the learning of what we do. And if you fail, you start another one. But what does failure really mean? Who decides what is a failure? So in my opinion, entrepreneurs never fail. Businesses shut down. And the reason businesses shut down in many cases is because they're not viable and they should be shut down. But that doesn't mean the entrepreneur has failed. The entrepreneur has moved on to something else, right? So I don't believe that, you're asking this question that, entrepreneurs fail or startups fail. Businesses shut down, they need to be shut down. Suboptimal businesses should be shut down, right? So this is part of life. Everything that doesn't work, you have to prune the dead trees. But that doesn't mean the entrepreneur did not learn enough while he did that dead tree business. And it is not true that the entrepreneur has failed. He would have found something else. And when he does his second one, he'll do better than what he did in the first one. So it's really a journey that you should be thinking about. And we should celebrate the entrepreneur as part of the journey, not as part of the result of the business that they create.
Yeah, very well said. Thank
Sorry,
you.
Sunil, if you want to add something to this. I just didn't want to resist your answering that question about failure because I just think entrepreneurs never fail.
I completely echo the sentiments. I always feel that the failure, if at all, exists. Failure is a imaginary, it's just a poetic concept. That is what I feel. After doing an enterprise, running an enterprise for last 25 years, failure was possible only when, it was possible only in one phase, that is 12th exam. only in 12th exam, if at all one can fail in the Indian context. If you are not getting those many marks, PCM or B or whatever, or maybe in CET these days, CET or JE, then maybe you will fail. But otherwise, once you are through, once you have passed that phase, I don't think one can fail. What is failure? I mean, what we do projects, what happens is you set a target that you want to do this by 31st of January. Okay, it doesn't happen on 31st of January. Fine, reschedule it. Do it till 31st of March. In that case, that doesn't. I mean, there are some projects, like for example, I was working for, recently, finally, it happened. I was working for a critical project for Nuclear Power Corporation. I mean, it was कुछ ज़्यादा ही लिया था. And it was to be completed within 1 year. It took 4.5 years, but we completed it. We completed it. I mean, what is a failure? I don't understand. You have to just reschedule it, keep doing it. I can tell you, I mean, even if I say those, the question whoever has asked to you, entrepreneurship is not a science. It is not an art. Okay. It is just practice. You keep on doing it. तो फक्त रियाज है, रियाज, और रियाज करते रहो. That's all, nothing else.
Thank you. Sheila, back to you.
Yes.
We've already passed time, by the way.
Yes.
Yes, 6:31.
I just would like to say that very good sharing that you did on failure. What I understand from here, Anand and Sudhir, is that once a person stops trying, at that time he fails. So failing in attempt is not a failure. It's once he stops trying, he fails in life.
That's correct. I think you said it well.
Right. So thank you so much. I have many questions. They are coming in my private chat. There are so many in the chat box, but I'm really sorry. We are not able to take up all of them. So we would like to close our session for today evening.
Our offer to answer questions free of charge was only till 6:30 p.m. Now the answers will be given on
Chargeable basis.
I had one interesting question. If at all, if you can quickly give that answer to that, I will be very happy. Anand sir and Sudhir. One question that I got is what really inspired you? What has been your inspiration in life? Was it an incident, a person, a thought, a tube light movement, which I thought everybody would like to know that you are inspiration to so many. What really inspired you to be where you are? And that would be last question for today evening.
Sudhir, you want to go first? Let me. I'm not a tube light guy. I am a very thoughtful person. I think through everything before I do anything. So I'm not a guy who gets inspired by one thing and jumps around. I am very. I'll just give you one more piece of advice that I find very useful for everyone is that, I believe in writing things down. I really write things down a lot. I review myself every year. I review what I'm doing, what I should do, what is this week's work, next week's work, all of that stuff. So I really write things down, and I see when things are on a sort of a screen or right, meaning all this is all typed, of course. But when I see it on a screen, I know what I'm doing and what I want to do. So I'm not just swayed around by some light bulb that, aisa karna chahiye, and all of a sudden I'll do something different. I'm not very impulsive in these kinds of matters.
Correct.
Amazing.
I think that's right. And in businesses, it doesn't happen like you get inspired by something and then try to do. At the most, if I get inspired, I will close the bedroom and I play tabla, or maybe I'll sing. I mean, inspired means मैं आज किसी की flute सुनी तो I will try that. That's all. In business, that doesn't happen. You can't take any impulsive decisions. There is a investment appraisal. There are many things. You have to think in 360 degrees, and then only you can do something. I mean, some speech I can get inspired. Baba Saheb Bhosle, I mean Shivaji Bhosle, Pradhapak Shivaji, Pracharya Shivaji Bhosle, something like that. Maybe a concert, but it doesn't happen like you get inspired and you do something. You have to do something, things very, in a methodical approach.
I think great answers by both of you, and I actually that has really highlighted because the difference, because Sheila is a coach, and coaches are always about these light bulb moments and that inspiring moment and that purple butterfly moment kind of thing. But I think entrepreneurs are responsible for many more lives, and because they're not solo flyers. And I think that is where just being inspired and just having that one light bulb moment is not sufficient. They have to think about so many things, because the ripple impact that their decision is going to cause is so
Because
big.
whatever you do has to be sustainable.
Absolutely.
That's very important.
Absolutely.